Welcome to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast, the show where brilliant professionals share how to sharpen the universal skills required to flourish at work. Enjoy more career fun, wins, meaning, and money with your host, Pete Makaitis.
Hello, and welcome to episode 1000. You may have noticed we went with the old intro music for this one, a little bit of a throwback, feel-good theme there. Remember that one? Well, many of you do, and a couple of you even prefer it. So give me that feedback, pete@awesomeatyourjob.com. What we're doing here is celebrating 1,000 episodes and celebrating you listeners who have been with us for this whole ride. Or maybe you just recently joined the ride. Welcome. It's still great to have you. And we have asked everyone to, hey, go ahead and submit your stories, your tales of transformation, results, good times, good vibes that have come from the show. And we've selected 15 of these winners, and 3 of them are receiving $200 Amazon gift cards, and all of them are receiving a t-shirt. And so you're going to get a chance to hear some of the cool ways this show has enriched them, which I hope will spark some ideas in you. Like, oh, wow, I guess that's really powerful transformational stuff. Maybe I should try that too. Or maybe for you, like it is for me, hearing these stories will just make you think, wow, this is a pretty special thing that we got here. And I'm so glad it exists. I'm thankful and grateful that we made it to 1,000 episodes. I'm thankful and grateful for you, for listening, for engaging, for sharing feedback, for filling out gigantic surveys to help shape the content where it goes, for sharing your stories, and for all the good vibes that have come from you associated with how to be awesome at your job. So this episode is about celebration, and we're going to hear some good stories, some good laughs, some good results, some good feels associated with things. Most folks opted to share their story via written word as opposed to voice recordings. So we're going to have some actual recordings of listener voices, and we're going to have some of them voiced by friends and collaborators of mine so that we can bring the written word into the audio medium. So that's the scoop. Let's kick it off with one of our extra awesome winners, Jay from New York City. Let's hear what Jay has to say.
Hey, Pete, this is Jay Swanson, and I want you to know that I look forward to your podcast and get excited when I see it show up in my library. Your show was actually recommended to me by my employer back when I was a brand new manager and was probably in my 3rd week on the job, feeling completely overwhelmed, completely certain they had made a mistake. I just couldn't shake that feeling of the imposter syndrome. When I got an email from our development team for new leaders, and with it, a suggestion of resources I should investigate. One of them was your episode 267, talking to Tara Moore about managing self-doubt to tackle bigger issues. Listening to that episode alone in my office with the door closed, thankfully, I wiped away the tears as I listened to a discussion that basically explained I was on the right path and I was supposed to be feeling this way. So I was hooked. What else could I improve by listening to your podcast? And I resolved to listen to as many episodes as I could to help me in my role as a leader. But it was when my director gave me feedback on our first one-to-one session that I knew your show would have more than reassurance for me. It would provide actionable strategies. She mentioned I was a little long-winded and left others quite confused with the emails that I was sending, sometimes sending several clarifying emails before I could get a response. She reasoned this was why I was not getting responses. I felt a little bruised by this. I always thought I communicated well, but taking a deep breath, I looked at what she was saying and saw that she was right, although I had no clue how I was supposed to make it better. So I looked through your library and found episode 890, The 5 Laws to Ask for What You Want by Laura Ferrix, and from it, I pulled the best piece of advice for a long-winded speaker. Consolidate everything to 2 sentences and 1 question. I immediately bought her book, and starting small with emails to colleagues, began to put her suggestions into practice. I even got some traction, as I recall the first couple emails gave me quick responses with direct answers. And then I found episode 951 with Chris Fenning and the 3 sentences that will improve almost every conversation. I got his book immediately, and after reading was able to see how this form of communication was something I could accomplish. Further, I noted his context, intent, key message melded well with Laura's 2 sentences and a question. And at that point, I felt I had a winning combination. I just needed a moment to use it. And as luck would have it, the opportunity came shortly thereafter. My director asked me to send a message to our senior VP in HR about an opportunity for staff recognition that I had actually suggested during my interview. We wanted to offer a recognition to our employees, but needed HR support, and my director felt that I should be the one to make that connection since it was my idea. I must have agonized over that email for at least an hour, carefully paring down the words, following the teachings of Laura and Chris to hone a 6-sentence email with one question: can we meet to discuss further? I sent the message after hovering over the send for like 10 minutes. It went to both the senior VP of HR and my director, and then I pretended to go about my day, but really just wanted to hide in the corner. No sooner had I opened up another task that I got a response from the senior VP. She wanted to meet and was arranging a call for that week. I clapped and then laughed at myself for clapping because I was getting excited over an email, but I felt I really had accomplished what I wanted. The cherry on top, though, is that shortly after that, my director called my cell, which normally would strike fear in my heart because what would be so urgent that she couldn't just send a message? And when I offered that to her, she laughed and said, "No, your email was fire. You keep sending emails like that, and we are going to really change the way this place runs." Relief washed over me when I heard that, and I've not forgotten the feeling to this day. Now I don't agonize as long over the messaging. I have the 3-sentence structure down well, and it's easier to pull together what I want to say. I've even had others asking me, "What's your secret?" This is not even hyperbole to tell you that I tell them how to be awesome at your job really has helped me do just that, and I refer them to episode 267 to start. So thank you, Pete. Congratulations on your 1,000th episode. It really is a milestone worth celebrating. I appreciate the great programming you've put together, and I managed to find something from each episode and truly appreciate your insight and the discussion.
That is what I'm talking about. And I have that same experience as Jay, where I hear an idea, I hear an expert of sorts, I think that's amazing. I immediately go out and want to buy their book or their audiobook or whatever, learn all the things I can and put it into practice. And then to hear crystal clear feedback, that thing you did was fantastic. Oh, it's beautiful. Thank you, Jay. Next up, we got a fun story coming from Eva from London, and this is voiced by my wife, my sweet bride, Katie. Here it is.
Your podcast helped get me to the Oscars. I'm self-employed, working in the film industry. A few years ago, I got asked to do what I expected would be my dream job. I was going to be working with a fantastic team, the majority of the crew I'd worked with a few times before. Unfortunately, the job had some issues, which meant that my immediate boss and 3 other colleagues all parted ways with the production shortly before we were due to start filming. I was one of the more senior members of the team, and I was really keen to keep the rest of the team together. I believed the film had potential to be something we'd all be proud to have stayed a part of. I was listening to your podcast with Jim Cathcart, and he was talking about how you can't motivate everybody with the same incentive. For example, you could be offering a prize of a cruise to someone who hates the idea of being out at sea. So when I came back to work with the remaining team and a few more people were thinking of quitting, I asked everybody what they would need from the job to make it worth their while to stay. 2 people asked for a promotion, and I was able to offer them that. Someone else asked to be able to no longer work on one aspect and instead focus on another. I was able to make that happen and then hire someone new to take over from where they had left off. We also had a new head of department join us, as well as 4 more crew members. One of these was a mother I'd worked with before, who could only offer part-time hours. Unfortunately, not everyone is keen to have part-time employees in a busy industry like mine, but she was fantastic at her job, so we found a way to make that work too. It was tough for the new team to all merge together in such a short space of time, but somehow we pulled it off and formed some amazing friendships. Our department ended up being nominated for an Oscar, and as a thank you for staying on board and helping to run the team, the nominee invited me as a +1, and I was able to attend the ceremony. It was an absolute dream come true. I often tell people about how the advice from your podcast helped me to stay strong when I felt so defeated, and I was able to build confidence with the team when everything else was so unstable. Also, from your interview with Robert Posen, I have written across my laptop, Ohio, only handle it once. I've been told I show signs of ADHD, and seeing those 4 letters helps me to get back to focusing on my task when I can feel my attention drifting onto something else. Thank you for all of the positivity and advice you bring to so many of us. I'm incredibly grateful. Thanks, Eva. P.S. Sorry I'm being vague about what the film actually was, but I signed a non-disclosure agreement when I was on the production, so I'm trying to be discreet.
So my takeaway from this is if you listen to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast, you're going to have lifelong dreams come true, such as going to the Oscars. How to Be Awesome at Your Job equals going to the Oscars. Beautiful. Thank you for that, Eva. Now, let's hear a story from Chris from Virginia. And this is voiced by Anne, who is the CEO of my other company, Cashflow Podcasting. By the way, holler if you ever need a podcast launched. Here we go.
About 4 years ago, I was promoted from an individual contributor to a manager. For many of you listening, this might be cause for celebration, but it caused my heart to sink. My company was having a rough year. The CEO had recently resigned, our financials were struggling, and they had just laid off a round of employees. I was concerned that if I lead my team poorly, I would be next on the chopping block. Add to that, I was, and sometimes still am, a conflict-avoidant, quiet-seeking introvert. Management was not in my plan. But what else could I do? I had bills to pay, so I accepted. My new team was respectful, but they had more work to do than they had time to complete it. They didn't have time to humor me, and I didn't have the skills needed to help them. It was clear that they were struggling with issues that they didn't have authority to correct, but that I did. In summary, I was stressed. I considered looking for a new job, but in the end, I decided to put everything I had into this role for 1 year. If I still hated it by then, I would begin my exit plan. So for that 1 year, I became a sponge. I soaked up any and every bit of work and leadership advice that I could find. I read books, found a mentor in my church, listened to podcasts, and did anything and everything that could help. One day, I stumbled upon this How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast, quite by accident, and I gave it a try. When I wasn't slogging through a dense audiobook on leadership, I was listening to this. Looking back, I learned a lot that year, but I couldn't tell you where most of the tools I developed came from. But I do remember clearly my first breakthrough in this role, and it was a direct result of episode 623 of this podcast, Mastering the 7 Habits. A little background. There was a procedure we followed where my team worked with another department to create a deliverable. And this other department made every step of the process a battle. Up until this point, my focus to fix this has been antagonistic in nature. Every time there was an issue, I would fight against them and force them to follow our procedure. And do it right, gosh darn it. But time and time again, this other department dug their feet and allowed our needs to sit on their back burner, sometimes for months. After I listened to this podcast, 2 habits stuck with me. Seek first to understand, then be understood, and think win-win. It was like a light bulb went off. When had I tried to understand the department pain points? Why was I seeking a win-lose solution? I was trying so hard to prove that I could protect my team that I hadn't stopped to wonder how my team could help theirs. That week, I called a meeting with a member of the problem department and invited him to explain their side. To my surprise, our procedure was essentially forcing them to duplicate their efforts and to process each item multiple times. They either needed to stay late or take time away from their customer-facing role. The process wasn't good for them or for the company at large. That meeting shifted my focus from how can I get them to follow the procedure to how can we change the procedure to work for both of us. Eventually, I found a method that would reduce processing time for both of our teams. I then spent the next 6 months working with both teams, slowly tweak the ideas to work for all participants. In the end, this win-win was actually a win-win-win. Win 1, we found a solution to this problem to save both teams a significant amount of time. Win 2, I developed relationships with 2 key employees in the problem department that I still lean on today. Win 3, I began to gain the trust of my new team. Win 4, this mindset shift gave my team permission to think creatively towards their problems without my need to step in. Fast forward to 2024, and I've gained many additional tools and ideas from listening to this podcast over the years. I'm now viewed as a high performer within my company, both based on my deliverables and my leadership. In fact, I was recently promoted a 2nd time, and I now manage multiple teams in my department. But most importantly, I love my job.
That is what I love to hear. Promoted a 2nd time, managing multiple teams, loving the job. That is what it's all about. Thank you, Chris. Next up, we have got a tale from Vikram from Mumbai, India. And this is voiced by John Paul, the man who infamously once said to me years ago, quote, "Pete, I demand you start a podcast." So thank John Paul for this. And we'll hear from Vikram now.
How your podcast helped me change not just jobs, but a career by reshaping my approach to interviews. Hello, Pete. My name is Vikram Kapakar. I live in Mumbai, India, and wanted to share that your podcast, How to Be Awesome at Your Job, has been instrumental in not just the interview process, but changing the course of my career as well. I am a lawyer by profession and had been working in a leading Indian IT services company for almost a decade. I believed in the adage of hard work gets good results. Therefore, I saw success in my role, but was always unhappy with the lack of recognition and growth and the day-to-day bitter negotiations. The icing on the cake was that the work environment was replete with unambitious people. With due respect, they were content with the lack of their career growth and ridiculed anyone who chose to think bigger. This lack of camaraderie led me to listen to Spotify during downtime, including one time during office lunch. That is how I was introduced to your amazing podcast, which I listened to continuously. One of the first episodes that helped me feel at ease in my work environment was episode 504, Building a Gratitude Mindset to Increase Productivity with Carl Stabe. This helped me appreciate my colleagues in a rather challenging work environment. Around that time, I came across the field of data protection. Intrigued by this field of law, I decided to certify myself in the relevant privacy certification, which I was able to obtain successfully. Thereafter, I came to the realization that I needed to look for a career that helped me fully utilize my newfound skills. This meant diving into the deep end of the interview pool after a decade's gap. Admittedly, the first few interviews I gave went terribly awry. I would fail to establish a connection with the employer around why I intended to change industries after 10 years. I would also launch into a rant about my existing workplace woes when asked the infamous, "Tell me about yourself" question. Here's where your podcast came in extremely useful yet again. As someone who is attempting to change industries, I needed to achieve two important milestones. First, I needed to help my potential employer understand the benefit I was bringing to their organization. Here's where your episode 640 with the amazing Jenna Duvivano, titled Why Being Qualified Isn't Enough, came of great use. At around 20 minutes into the podcast, yes, I remember the timestamp, Jenna talks about 3 messages the candidate should get clearly across to the interviewer. 1. How can I save the company money? 2. How can I make the company money? And 3. How can I make the recruiter's life easier? I accordingly did away with my previous responses and modified content to reflect how I could help the employer in these 3 ways. I also practiced steering the conversation when asked the "tell me about yourself" query to my prepared responses. The second milestone that I needed to achieve was to overcome the recruiter's apprehension about my career-changing intentions. I needed to establish an emotional connection, not go on the aforementioned rant. I utilized lessons from episode 570 with Shane Snow, How to Use Stories to Persuade and Connect with Others. In this episode, Shane talks about the elements, relatability, fluency, and tension, that go into making a great storyline, and how everyone can work a storyline into driving their message across. Accordingly, I created a personal storyline with the following metaphor, which came in useful when the head of privacy asked me why I wanted to make the jump after a decade. My son loves his Lego sets, I told him, having practiced this previously. When he was younger, the Lego sets amounted to a few pieces, not exceeding 100 at the most. Now that he's older, he still enjoys his Legos, but the sets now run into a few hundred pieces. Similarly, while I enjoyed working with privacy challenges in my previous role, I am now looking for a more complex privacy challenge, much like the complex sets my son now enjoys, and I believe I can get this at your organization. It gives me immense pleasure to say that this was the only question that he asked during the interview, and of course, I did get that job. So Pete, this was the way that your podcasts helped me to change not just jobs, but also a career. I am so much more content in my professional life, all thanks to you.
My favorite part, that was the only question he asked during the interview, and he got the job. One interview, question, job claimed. That's called being awesome interviewing. Well done, Vikram. Now let's hear from Jude from Australia, voiced by Pedro.
I joined Google Australia back during the pandemic around September 2020 as part of the Great Resignation. I was very excited about being part of this great organization and wanted to become an impact player right away. In my past career spanning over 20 years, I was the funny guy. The one who was okay to be pushed aside or was okay to disappoint Jude because, well, he's a nice guy. I wanted to change that perception and to be taken more seriously. After joining Google, I came across my first encounter with How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast in an internal weekly newsletter that talks about productivity tips. That particular episode was linked to the interview that Pete did with Hal Elrod the author and creator of The Miracle Morning. I was not only intrigued by this episode, I was very excited to test out The Miracle Morning myself. I was not a morning person, and working late into the night, close to midnight, or even after midnight was a habit of mine. Although I heard about The Miracle Morning and listened to Pete's interview of Hal, I didn't actually start practicing The Miracle Morning till about 12 months later. During this time, I continued to listen to episodes of How to Be Awesome at Your Job, and I could see how I started to put into practice some of these gold nuggets that I was hearing. It was back in January of 2023 that I finally made the decision to download the app and start my Miracle Morning. Over the last 18 or so months, I have been practicing The Miracle Morning, and I can't begin to explain the impact it has had in my life. I used to struggle with focus and holding my attention on one thing. I used to sleep late, wake up early, and constantly feel sluggish during the day. There was no intentional exercise, although I did go for short walks every once in a while. There was no routine, and I was winging a day even though there was so much I had to accomplish at both work and at home. Once I started doing The Miracle Morning, I could see my focus change. I was more self-aware, more attentive to things happening around me, and definitely more present. My family started to notice how calm I would be in situations where I would have been much more stressed out before. My family decided to go on an overseas trip last year, and it was one of the best family vacations we all experienced. As a result of listening to Pete interview amazing authors, there was always some gold nugget, as Pete would say, in each episode that I could put into practice. I was also a lucky recipient of Liz Wiseman's ebook on how to be an impact player for posting about that particular episode where Pete interviewed Liz. I've also become more productive at work. I now understand the importance of a good night's sleep, so I don't stay up late and get engrossed in social media or Netflix, but rather make the call to wind down for the night following the easy steps of the Miracle Evening. I can definitely see the difference between the days that I skip my Miracle Morning versus the days that I do it. I am so tuned in and present. This has also helped me be a better husband to my amazing wife, a better father to my kids, a better son to my parents, brother to my siblings, as well as a better son-in-law to my in-laws. I can't imagine my life without the Miracle Morning nowadays, and I have Pete and the team at How to Be Awesome at Your Job to thank for this. I can't wait to listen to not only the 1000th episode, but hundreds more episodes of How to Be Awesome at Your Job. Thank you, Pete.
Boy, I love that so much. Better husband, better father, better son. Can't imagine life without it. Powerful, powerful stuff. Thank you for that, Jude. I am delighted to hear this has been so transformational for you. Next up, we got Dean Carroll, a huge fan of the show, a constant supporter, cheerleader, and former guest who's got a really cool story about some connections forming from the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast.
Pete, I'm going to go way back to episode number 13 that you had with Dr. Todd Dewitt that was released on May 18th, 2016, as the one I enjoyed so much and impacted me in many ways. This may even shock Todd that I flagged this podcast with you from 8 years ago. Earlier that year, I'd watched one of Todd's lynda.com, now LinkedIn Learning, online courses about leadership and was struck by how down-to-earth Todd was. He's got a PhD in organizational behavior, but it was his style that was so real and so genuine. He's able to take complex topics and make them easy to understand and not intimidate people. When I saw a post that Todd was going to be a guest of yours, Pete, I made sure it was on my calendar. It was because of that podcast that I then became a loyal follower and listener of How to Be Awesome at Your Job. Todd's key points from that podcast reconfirmed to me that my similar philosophy was the right approach. Number one, it is so important to just be yourself. At the end of the day, we can't fake it. So let people see the authentic side of you rather than the one you think they may want to see or hear. Don't hide. Let the honest version of yourself be visible, as that is a much easier path to follow. Be authentic. Number two, it's okay to tell stories about when you didn't succeed or when you made a mistake. Todd said to share your examples of failure, exposing your vulnerability and modeling the way to enable your team to succeed going forward. We all make mistakes, admit it, but at the same time provide examples of how you rebounded and set a successful path going forward. The best leaders don't fear showing their human side and that they don't win every time. Number three, lifelong learning, self-improvement, and always be learning are more than just catchphrases, and they don't need to be overwhelming for you. When I listened to this podcast in 2016, I had just finished some postgraduate courses at New York University in my late 50s with students more than half my age. I loved it. It reinvigorated me and reinforced the message that self-improvement should be embraced. It's a real positive. It keeps you fresh and on top of your game. Fast forward a year to 2017, and I'm in California recording my own course for LinkedIn Learning, and I'm driving my car through the parking lot when who do I spot but Todd Dewitt? I slam on the brakes, open the window, and yell out, "Hey, Todd, I love your work." I think I probably startled him for sure, and I guess for our first introduction, he sure saw the authentic side of me. Being real, being confident in myself to expose my vulnerability, and always approaching self-improvement as a positive are lessons that I'm glad align with Todd's guidance from podcast number 13. Todd has since appeared again on How to Be Awesome at Your Job. This time it was podcast number 859 on April 24th, 2023. How to be a leader instead of a boss. Again, it was a session full of great lessons and ideas for ways to be better at our jobs. Wow, Pete, 1,000 episode, tens of thousands of questions asked, and that has created a jam-packed podcast collection of advice covering the gamut from career management to communication and from productivity to relationships. You approach every podcast always so prepared with great questions and thoughtful commentary. Well done indeed, and congratulations.
Yes, please be sure to approach a guest that you've heard on the show in similar fashion as Dean approached Todd, and tell me how it goes. Next up, we got Adrian from Rochester, New York. Take it away, Adrian.
Pete's podcast is a portal. It's a portal into experiences, knowledge, and wisdom that I would never have access to on my own. My name is Adrian Loftus, and this is my story. After teaching for almost a decade and a half, I found myself wanting to lead greater change in the field of education. I wanted research and best practices to drive not just my own teaching, but that of other teachers, so that all students achieved as highly as possible. So I moved into a district-level program coordinator position, developing the next generation of teachers. While this is incredibly rewarding work, I wanted to expand my reach even further, so I took on additional responsibilities. But even that wasn't enough. I wanted to go further. Just about this time, in May, I listened to Pete's conversation with Marshall Goldsmith, the #1 leadership coach in the world. Marshall discussed his AI, MarshallBot, and put a challenge out to listeners. Anyone who interacts with MarshallBot 500 times in the next 5 days will get a free coaching session with Marshall himself. Meet with the #1 leadership coach in the world for free? In that moment, I realized not only could I never afford a coaching session, which, according to a simple Google search, would run someone about 6 figures or so an hour, but normally Marshall's coaching is reserved for C-suite members in top companies. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get access to one of the most accomplished coaches of our time. Over the next few days, I talked to MarshallBot on everything from goal setting to reflection strategies. I even had MarshallBot help me draft a leadership development plan, which I'm currently working through. After fulfilling the challenge, I reached out to Marshall himself to claim my prize, a 1-hour one-on-one coaching session. Quite frankly, I really didn't even expect a response. But about a month later, I got one. A meeting was scheduled, and on a beautiful August morning, I was the privileged recipient of a coaching session where in just 1 hour, I was prompted to reflect on my areas of opportunity, reset in my next career steps, and connected with another inspirational leader to learn from. Anyone can read Marshall's books, and they're quite brilliant, especially What Got You Here Won't Get You There. But actually being coached, that will spur an ambitious leader to reflect, learn, grow, and develop in ways I didn't fully understand before. Quite simply put, the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast, in the right hands, has the potential to change your career trajectory.
I love that so much. Marshall Goldsmith drops huge challenge. Adrian rises to the occasion, and goodness unfolds. Thank you for that, Adrian. Next up, we got Sean from Phoenix, Arizona. voiced by one of our producers, Marco.
A few years ago, I found myself stuck in a cycle of stress and overwhelm at work. Despite putting in long hours and doing my best to meet deadlines, I always felt like I was barely keeping my head above water. No matter how hard I worked, my productivity didn't seem to match my efforts, and I struggled with managing my time efficiently. This constant state of pressure started to affect both my work performance and my well-being. That's when I started to do some self-care professionally and looking at ways to skill up. I came across a podcast series called How to Be Awesome at Your Job. This resource became a turning point in my professional and personal journey, helping me flourish in ways I hadn't anticipated. As I started to dig in on what is possible with How to Be Awesome at Your Job, I was inspired by what the podcast offered. I was in real need of a mindset change and didn't know how to transpire my approach. I began my peak transition with podcasts that really helped me. One that really stands out was 709, The 8 Powers That You Need to Thrive and Change. See, at this time, I lost my mom and was in a real pivot in life. Where do I go from here personally and professionally? I was thinking of changing careers after 12 years at a company and looking to shift my career and change. This podcast changed my mindset to move forward. As I began to develop and grow with How to Be Awesome at Your Job, it became a regular planned part of my development and skilling up. This podcast has taught me the power of choice, freedom, and the ability to make change for yourself personally and professionally. There was an episode that was last year, and I was going through a cancer diagnosis. I was lucky to beat it, but it was right at the diagnosis. And the podcast interviewee had gone through this as well and shared how they applied it to their personal development and growth. Oh my God. I cried listening to this podcast and wrote a letter to Pete, sharing my story and how that episode changed my life. Let me be clear. The question asked is, how has listening to How to Be Awesome at Your Job helped me at work? I can't say it has just helped me at a career. It has, yes, but it transformed me personally and professionally. That is priceless if you ask me. When you open your mind and bring in new opportunities to work on, skills to try, tools to leverage, it automatically builds into my behaviors and personality to the point that it reflects on my professional and personal person. When I sum up what this podcast has done for me, it has taught me practical tips on productivity, time management, and mindset. It helped me overhaul how I approached my career and my life. I adopted strategies like time management and tasking, which boosted my efficiency and reduced stress. This podcast also emphasized the importance of setting boundaries and maintaining focus, which allowed me to prioritize tasks more effectively. Additionally, its insights on overcoming self-doubt and fostering a growth mindset helped me approach challenges with confidence. This podcast has transformed my productivity, mental clarity, and overall job and personal performance. In the end, what I've learned from this podcast isn't just a set of strategies. It's a mindset shift. Remember, in the beginning of writing this, mindset is what I needed to pivot. It has taught me that growth comes from not only mastering tools, but also understanding how to optimize myself. The real takeaway is that with the right guidance, I can continually evolve, adapt, and thrive in any challenge that comes my way. Thank you, Pete, for encouraging me and with me. Thank you, Awesome at Your Job, for all you have done for me and my many colleagues and peers that now leverage Awesome at Your Job regularly. I appreciate you.
Wow. Thank you, Sean, for this story in your life. I am delighted that you are alive and have beaten cancer, just like Laura Gassner-Otting in that conversation. And it's kind of beautiful when things align just right in terms of what you need to hear is what you do hear. And I feel like the show for me has done that again and again and again. It feels like a providential blessing at times. So, Sean, I'm delighted that's been your experience as well. Thank you for that. Next up, we got Maria from Orlando, Florida. And this is also voiced by a Maria, although she goes by Ria, one of my producers. And here we go.
During the early days of COVID, working at a local food bank felt like navigating through a 2-year disaster. Our organization went from providing 150,000 meals to 300,000 daily in our Central Florida community overnight. With the community's needs skyrocketing, our development team was also pushed to grow and adapt even faster. Our team doubled in size, the entire structure shifted, and my role completely changed within a few months. I went from leading one small team to 2 larger ones, and while I loved the challenge, it was a lot to take on so quickly. The learner in me eagerly sought out management training and other free resources to prepare for this new challenge. Around that time, I started taking walks to clear my head, and it was during one of those walks in 2020 that I stumbled upon How to Be Awesome at Your Job. The leadership episodes have become my go-to, with episode 534, moving from top performer to excellent leader with Ryan Hawk being my all-time favorite. This episode was special to me because it marked the beginning of my leadership journey. I had always been a top performer, but managing a larger team required new skills that I hadn't fully developed yet. Initially, I struggled to delegate and held on to tasks that I should have entrusted to my team. I made plenty of mistakes along the way, but I was committed to helping and serving others, and that episode gave me the insight I needed to make the transition. After listening to Ryan, I did 3 things. 1, I found my tribe. I connected with a core group of people outside of work who I still rely on for advice and sanity checks. 2, one-on-ones for trust. I set up regular one-on-one meetings to listen, build trust, and connect with my team. 3, ask more questions. This is one of my strengths, and I leaned into it hard. I asked questions to learn more about my team and myself. This podcast became my go-to for building my voice as a leader, and more importantly, learning how to listen, give feedback, and understand my team. Pete, your podcast came at a time when I needed it most. Your positive, practical approach to leadership has taught me how to be a more compassionate leader, and I keep sharing it with others for that reason. I'm so grateful I found How to Be Awesome at Your Job when I needed it. It's been a part of my leadership journey, and I continue to learn and grow from your episodes. Thank you so much for all the hard work you put into your episodes. Maria Shanley, Director of Marketing and Data Management at the Second Harvest Food Bank of Central Florida.
300,000 daily meals. Wow. One of the things I love about equipping people to be more awesome at their jobs is that it impacts real people, the beneficiaries, in terms of the customers, the clients, the patrons, the colleagues, real people being enriched by real ways that matter and are transformational and touch the heart. So thank you, Maria, for what you're doing. And I'm so glad the show helps you do that better. Next up, we've got Deborah from El Salvador, again, voiced by my sweet bride, Katie.
Listening to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast has honestly been like having a career coach in my pocket. As an HR manager, I'm constantly juggling a million things, and this podcast has given me the tools to manage and thrive in the chaos. One of my all-time favorite episodes was with Dr. Carrie Howells, where she talked about gratitude. I loved her idea of moving a penny from one pocket to the other as a reminder to practice gratefulness throughout the day. I started doing it myself, and it's had a surprising impact on my mindset and how I interact with my team. It's a small habit, but it reminds me to stay positive even on those tough days when HR can feel overwhelming. Another big win came from an episode about building a feedback culture. Inspired by that, I revamped how we do feedback at my company. Instead of the dreaded annual review, I started these quick, casual feedback check-ins that have totally transformed how my team communicates. The result? More open conversations, higher engagement, and even a few light bulb moments that led to new talent initiatives. It's been such a game changer for morale and our retention rates. The podcast also helped me tackle my biggest challenge, time management. I was always caught up in the operational stuff, but after learning some tips, I started delegating better and focusing more on the strategic projects that light me up, like improving our employer brand and engagement strategies. Now I'm more in control of my time, and it's crazy how much more productive and creative I've become. The best part is that the podcast gives you ideas and confidence. It's helped me push boundaries, experiment with new ways of doing things, and show up for my team with energy and purpose every day. Honestly, the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast has made me a better leader and I can't imagine navigating this crazy HR world without it.
Deborah, I am so glad you are better able to show up with energy and purpose each day. And I'm so glad that the folks you're supporting as an HR manager have you as a resource. So thank you for that. Next up, we have Jill from Massachusetts, and this is voiced by another Anne.
A 2021 interview I heard with Dr. Vicky Medbeck happened at just the right time for me. At that time, I had been preparing for a mid-year check-in with my supervisor, and this episode helped me find the strategy to ask for a pay increase. I listened to the podcast, read through the transcript, and literally went through Vicky's tips and laid out the following. 1, my employer's pressing needs. 2, my differentiators, using my supervisor's words from my review last spring. 3, the XY axis, and 4, multiple offers, which I broke down into salary. I asked for an exact stretch number with room to negotiate and had data to provide context. Plus title change, supervisory duties, an office, leaving my supervisor with lots of room to negotiate. And I built my conversation or presentation around the 5 Fs. As a result, the conversation with my supervisor went so well. I didn't expect any immediate changes, but left the meeting knowing that 1, I'm an excellent employee. 2, we would continue the conversation over the next 6 months until the annual review. And 3, that being so organized was really impressive to my boss. I couldn't have presented my thoughts as cleanly or as persuasively without your podcast tips. While I didn't get a raise right then and there, I knew that it was better that I asked than if I hadn't. In Vicky's words, I, quote, drew attention to my performance and made it clear that I had the ambition to advance. The conversation continued over several months, and in the end, I did get a nice raise. So thanks again for your valuable podcast and the steady stream of experts who have helped me over the past few years.
You heard the introduction lady say it. Enjoy more career fun, wins, meaning, and money. Well, there it is. Got the nice raise. More money. Great to hear. Congratulations, Jill. Hope you're putting it to good, fun uses. Next, we got Ed from Memphis, who is a super fan, leaving lots of great comments and bits of feedback and inspiration. Let's hear his story as voiced by our producer, Marco.
Listening to How to Be Awesome at Your Job has deeply influenced my ability to flourish by aligning my work with my core value, having a positive impact on the lives of others. Throughout my career, this has been my guiding principle, whether in my early years as a clinical psychologist or now in the corporate world, where the impact of my efforts isn't always as visible. I wanted to make a difference. But the question was, how? Delivering programs has the potential to create positive change when participants apply what they learn. However, I realized there were more opportunities to help others succeed. One morning, while listening to a How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast on my walk, I had an epiphany. I could amplify the impact by sharing the valuable insights from the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcasts and transcripts with my colleagues. I began using internal platforms to share these podcasts with team members and leaders, posting a total of 126 episodes to date. One standout example is episode 993 with Marcy Rader, which I shared this morning as part of a series focused on well-being and happiness. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with numerous thumbs up and comments about how her tips can and will help them excel, both professionally and personally. Having the transcripts available is a huge bonus. The feedback from colleagues who express how these podcasts are enhancing their work and lives confirms that I'm living my core value. By sharing this content, I've not only enriched their professional journeys, but also reaffirmed my own sense of purpose. How to Be Awesome at Your Job has empowered me to help others be their best, and in doing so, I've been able to stay true to what matters most to me.
Ed, thank you for that sharing. I'm so glad that is enriching folks. And please, everyone, feel free to share the good news as it can enrich more colleagues and friends along the way. Next up, we have Usha from North Carolina, voiced by our producer, Ria.
The episode 993, How to Boost Your Focus by Streamlining Your Priorities with Marcy Rader, helped me the most. The insight about stop believing that doing more will get you more inspired me the most to make a change. I'm a person who works very hard, honestly, and I try that my deliverables are close to perfection, with less to zero on defects or issues. To achieve this high level of quality, I spend a lot of hours, mostly cutting into personal time or even longer nights. It gave me contentment that my work is high quality and I'm able to deliver the best. But I have missed exercises in the evenings or family time or other personal engagements in the routine agenda, even if they were of high priority that I know I should be taking care of. After listening to this episode, I came to realize the following. What I thought is priority may be priority, but not to the trajectory that I was taking it. I was overambitious, rather zealous that it completely masked the essence of a life after work. I was pushing myself too much and it ended up causing burnout and adding to stress. And it gave rise to neck and shoulder pain that I had to be on steroids to ease the pain as I was sitting endlessly at my chair to achieve the best. I did not understand that I'm already there, but I'm just pushing too much to be the bestest. I wasn't giving any importance or realizing the importance of health, life, and relationships. And last, I was filled with gratitude when I received applause and appreciation for my work, but did not realize that I can still get the same with a different approach. Which leads me to the steps that I took from this episode that helped me to change the way I was approaching and handling tasks. You can be close to perfection, but noticing when it's too much and it may not be needed is paramount. I also learned how to prioritize and have smaller, sustainable, and achievable goals at work and in my personal life. Having set priorities and changing or juggling them as needed helps to cope with that pushing oneself too much to cause burnout. I also learned to take quick breaks that help me reset and magically find a solution to the problem. The issue will end up being solved once I return after a quick sprint or after taking my dog for a brisk walk. I honestly have seen this magic happen many a time. When we take quick breaks, if we are not able to solve a problem, it gets more ramified if we continue to sit on it. Take a break and return, and you will have new ideas enlightening your brain and it will set it right to work. My shoulder and neck pain also vanished, and I had better spinal strength given that I was exercising more regularly and did not sit on a chair staring at the screen for endless hours. I learned to move around and improve my posture. Key learnings that I also had during discussions with folks at work helped me move along, gain more confidence, and the support that I needed. Helped me understand that what I was thinking wasn't exactly the right way, not the way, but the long, winding trail that would take me nowhere. Talking to others helped me get a better perspective and visualize things from a different angle. It also helped me to realize that some of them were also going through the same phase as me. Hence, it helped to exchange ideas and help and support each other. I felt how much I might have sacrificed not getting the bigger picture. This helped me move from a tunnel vision to getting a bird's eye view, and I could see and feel the rewards. I took deep breaths when I feel stressed, or in general when something fills my mind. This helps and has been a proven technique in psychology. Reading or listening to some good motivational material often during the week helps with coping mechanisms and handling what we are presented every day to tackle in front of us. It also taught me to effectively manage time. Time management is key in being efficient with our work tasks and balancing our personal tasks. It teaches us how to have a good work-life balance. I learned that I must give importance to exercise, as good health is paramount for one's happiness. This has had a rejuvenating effect in my mind. I feel more energized, alert, and active. We become smart individuals who can take time in our hands to manage and have a gentle balance with work and life for an improved focus overall.
Usha, I'm so glad to hear your health has improved. And I just encourage everybody to take care of yourselves. Make sure to find that balance, find that good energy flowing, and everybody is enriched all the more for you having done so. Next is here from Mike from Great Britain, as voiced by Marco.
Hello. I'm not looking to win anything, so I will not write a long essay or anything that is designed to win. I just wanted to say that before I listened to your podcast about 2.5 years ago, I never thought I could run a company. Events then led to me having to step, and I am now applying the wisdom from your guests on a daily basis and have grown the company from 10 employees to 25. And turnover is growing between 30 to 40% year on year under my management. So I have gone from thinking I could not do it to then doing it without knowing what I was doing to now growing my own style of management and company culture by religiously listening to your podcast. And that is pretty awesome, I would say. So thanks for everything you do for your community of listeners globally, because I'm in a little British seaside town listening to your show whilst hiking up the chalk cliffs, looking over the English Channel in the morning before heading into the office and applying my learning. Keep up the good work. Thanks, Mike.
Mike wasn't planning on winning anything, but he did. He wins. And I think we all win when we step up and take on a bigger thing than you thought you could handle. And then lo and behold, oh, wow, it's really working. That's so cool. Thank you for your story, Mike. And finally, last and certainly not least, we have got Angelica from Denmark, as voiced by Mariah, also from my other company, Cashflow Podcasting. Let's hear from Angelica.
Hi, Pete. Thank you for the initiative. I've been following the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast since around episode 730, when I discovered this by chance via a LinkedIn learning session. During COVID, I used to work from home and started taking long walks after work to relax and unwind. During a normal 4 to 5K walk, I would listen to at least one episode of How to Be Awesome at Your Job. And when I got home, not only have I had fresh air, but also a fresh view on problems all of us may have at work. I feel so lucky to have met you, and I do recommend your podcast to my employees, colleagues, and friends outside work. During some of my one-on-ones with employees, if somebody will start sharing their issues, after listening to them, sometimes I couldn't hold it back, and I share the link to the episode where I think they could find the answer to their issue. I've worked at Siemens for almost 20 years. I love my job, and I realized I love it even more when I listen to the inspiring sessions where the guest speakers share their views on relevant aspects of the corporate world. In my role as manager, over the last many years, I've experienced that there are waves where people's motivation and attitudes change depending if some of the changes implemented in the company affect them personally or not. I've been through a lot of change in the last years, and I found it difficult to convince my team to change and follow my lead. I've had times where my people were frustrated as a normal part of the change process, and I had times where I personally got frustrated over the continuous negative spiral of the issues and problems raised without any suggestion to solve or troubleshoot from inside. I felt like my people waited for me to find all the answers and solve all the raised issues. When some of these were solved, no one remembered to appreciate my efforts or to feel happy, but instead, new issues were creeping in with the same request that I, as their manager, should solve these urgently. This started to get on my nerves, and I realized I cared so much for my people that I fully forgot to take care of myself, my family, and my own confidence was decreasing exponentially with every issue that I was solving for them. This is where, after many episodes of How to Be Awesome at Your Job, I love especially the ones focusing on efficiency and communication via storytelling, I decided I needed a change. Managing 20 people and doing governance for 100 commercials was too much for me, especially when I got involved in all kinds of company improvement projects. I was stretched so thin that I couldn't see how wasted I was. So I agreed with my manager. It was time for me to let go. I let go my biggest part of the team, hiring a new manager who cared to listen and have a new style of work with them. I stepped up last year in October, only focusing on the most important projects and communication packages to the people. Doing so, I have received a Give Focus Award to the All Employees Day in 2023. The award found me unprepared in front of our project management crowd of 400 colleagues who voted for these 10 awards. So I was thinking that all these episodes must have given some changes in the way I see my work and express myself. And I continuously and diligently follow you twice a week. This year, I was invited for our leadership meeting in Hamburg, and guess what? Because my dedication during budget times and my communication style, managing changes in the project business, I have received another prize, and that is a long blade from the wind turbine made in a 3D printer to recognize me with a quality award, again, one of 8 winners, this time voted by my management team members. And with this, another promotion. A new step for me will start now on October 1st. I will become the head of project controllers for offshore execution team in the wind power part of Siemens Energy. Of course, I competed for this role with other good candidates, but I got the job, and I deep inside believe I got it because I've been trained consistently in how to be awesome at my job by you and your guest speakers. Therefore, one more time, thank you for being there. Yours faithfully, Angelica Falkenberg.
Award-winning, promotion-getting, congratulations on these results, Angelica. And I hope everyone has been finding some cool results from the podcast in your life as you implement cool things you're learning, as you take care of yourself, as you try new stuff. That is my wish for you. I hope that you have been well enriched by the first 1,000 episodes, and I hope you continue to be enriched by the episodes to come. I appreciate you so much. I'm glad that you're on the other side listening, and I wish you the very best over the course of the next 1,000 episodes. So I hope to catch you next time, and peace.
Thanks for listening. To get the most out of the show, we recommend 2 key things. First, check out the extra resources at awesomeatyourjob.com. You can find this episode's transcript and links, as well as the perfect episode for your situation. You can search the full-text transcripts of hundreds of episodes or explore episodes tagged by topic and competency covered. Second, subscribe to the podcast and get future episodes automatically. You can subscribe by telling Siri and several other smartphones and speakers, subscribe to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast, or by tapping subscribe in your podcast player of choice. If you'd like some extra help figuring out podcasts and how subscriptions work, visit awesomeatyourjob.com/subscribe for guidance. Hope to catch you on the next episode of How to Be Awesome at Your Job.